What's up everybody? In today's video we will be talking about the future of Spider-Man in the MCU, as well as Tom Holland's possible retirement from the role of Spider-Man. And just a reminder, these videos are made possible by my supporters on this platform, so if you do want to support me, be sure to hit that big, beautiful subscribe button. And be sure to check out the Patreon link in the description below, and what it would mean for said future. So, Tom Holland has come out and said that he doesn't plan to play Spider-Man for too much longer. He says, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe what's best for Spider-Man is that they do a Miles Morales film. I have to take Peter into account too. He's an important part of my life, but if I'm playing him after I'm 30, I've done something wrong. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say so. There's plenty of, well, the two previous Spider-Man actors, I believe, played Spider-Man into their 30s. And it's not like you're not starring in a wealth of films outside of Spider-Man, but I get it. Like, if he wants to move on, he wants to move on, and that's completely fair enough. So what could the future of Spider-Man potentially entail? It has also been stated that Spider-Man No Way Home is kind of like Spider-Man's equivalent to Avengers Endgame. And I think in many ways that makes sense. For Tom Holland's Peter Parker, for his story, it's not going to get much bigger than this. We're opening the Spider-Verse. We're getting potentially the Sinister Six. Doc Ock and Green Goblin, Spider-Man's arch nemeses, are going to be in this film together. So there's certainly a case to be made for this being the final Spider-Man film, as well as that is up in the air as to whether or not his identity reveal is ever going to get reversed. Doctor Strange states in the trailer that they botched the spell, and it seems apparent that MJ and Ned still know his identity. So would they necessarily try the spell again after botching it up so badly the first time? So in the spirit of Avengers Endgame and this being like Spider-Man's equivalent to it, I'm open to the possibility that they could perhaps kill off Tom Holland's Peter Parker in Spider-Man No Way Home. And we're going to be looking at some potential theories here. If I'm telling the absolute truth, this also just reminds me of Iron Man 3, when all of the news outlets were saying that Robert Downey Jr. would be stepping down from the role, that Age of Ultron could be his final appearance, and, you know, Robert Downey Jr. was playing very coy about it as well, being like, ooh, I think I'm getting a little old. And we saw him again, just in, you know, bit parts in other people's movies, so I think that's also a possibility with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It's safe to say that Spider-Man will remain in the MCU in some capacity through the Spider-Man Freshman Year TV series. But okay, theory time. They kill off Peter Parker. They kill off Tom Holland's Spider-Man in Spider-Man No Way Home. I feel like what could happen next is that Andrew Garfield could step up. I really like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, but I feel like he'd be quite a significantly older Spider-Man. And his dynamic in the MCU would maybe be a bit too different. As well as that, he's got a lot at home waiting for him. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man has lost Gwen Stacy. You could also easily make it so that Aunt May died off screen, so he's got nothing left in his own universe. Knowing that villains still run rampant in the MCU, Andrew Garfield could maybe step up and avenge Tom Holland's Spider-Man as the resident Peter Parker of the MCU, which would also give us a continuation of the Amazing Spider-Man series. We could also maybe just ignore the whole web blood thing. Like, maybe we could, like, not web blood, but the magic blood that he has that, you know, was prompted by special Parker-infused spiders. Fuck that. But, like, it would give us an opportunity to actually get the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man right. But I'm pitching this not as necessarily that he is the main resident Spider-Man of the MCU, but he could mentor Miles Morales. Now, the question is, why not have Tom Holland mentor Miles Morales? Well, the dichotomy of Peter and Miles works best when Peter is an older Spider-Man. Like, look at the Spider-Man PS4 game series. Like, we've got an older adult Peter Parker in his 20s mentoring a teenage Miles Morales, and that's a much more interesting dynamic that I don't think you would get out of Tom Holland and a Miles Morales. I feel like you'd get a much better version of that with the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. So we could have MCU Spider-Man films focusing on Miles Morales' rise to becoming Spider-Man, with Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man mentoring him. I'd be game for that. If Tom Holland wants to step down from the role and that's what they want to do, I think that would be a great way to go. I also think there's the possibility, though, that after Spider-Man No Way Home, there's a chance that maybe Marvel Studios won't fight too vehemently to keep Spider-Man in the MCU. But it is interesting what's going on here. Like, you know, Spider-Man No Way Home very much feels like a finale. Tom Holland is talking about potentially stepping down from the role in possibly like 5 years' time. This is most likely going to be the biggest Spider-Man movie ever. I don't think they can ever go bigger than this. So I feel like after this, something new could be on the horizon, and that could be with Miles Morales. It could also be that Miles Morales becomes Spider-Man without a Peter Parker, like Peter Parker's dead in that world. Or it could just be that we're not going to see Tom Holland as Peter Parker again. Maybe they're just going to phase him out of the MCU. Maybe the legacy of MCU Spider-Man just lives on through Spider-Man freshman year, and that's it. That's the one MCU Spider-Man project we'll be getting, while Sony maybe makes new standalone Spider-Man movies. Because I can't imagine that Sony are just going to be like, okay, Spider-Man's done now. That's that. That's it for Peter Parker, or that's it for Spider-Man in general. Like, I feel like you might get an outside of the MCU Miles Morales series. But it's weird because, okay, Venom 2 spoilers ahead. Why bring Venom to the MCU if Spider-Man's going to get phased out of the MCU? Unless Venom's replacing MCU Spider-Man, but I can't see that happening. I mean, I'm gonna put it this way. After No Way Home, there's not a huge amount left for MCU's Peter Parker to do. Like, he's encountered most of the Spider-Man rogues gallery that people want to see the most. I mean, with the exception of Venom, I think, like, there's still room for a Spider-Man and Venom crossover. But as it stands, we still don't know who the 6th villain in this film is, or if there even is one. Maybe they're not actually doing the Sinister Six and will do the Sinister Six at a later date. I don't know. But I feel like that would be a very bizarre decision. But yeah, if you asked me what I would like to see if Tom Holland is stepping down from the role, it would either be a full reboot, and this would be outside of the MCU, to just tell purely Spider-Man-centric stories without any MCU crossover or anything like that. Or it would be to have Andrew Garfield remain in the MCU as a mentor for Miles Morales. I mean, look, this also opens the possibility of maybe instead doing Spider-Man 4 or The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and getting it right. They've opened the multiverse now, they've opened that Pandora's box. At the same time, though, I'm treating this as closure for those other two Spider-Men. I'm not gonna assume we'll ever see them again after this. I take nothing for granted, but I do think that Miles Morales could be the future of Spider-Man in the MCU, if not Spider-Man in general. But I do think it would be a shame not to see a more mature Peter Parker, and if Tom Holland isn't intending on doing that, I think Andrew Garfield is the next best thing. As I've said before, Tobey Maguire is my favorite Spider-Man, but I still think he should be the Raimi Spider-Man. I don't think that he should be resurrected into the MCU. I feel like between Andrew Garfield and a teenage Miles Morales, the dichotomy would be just right. But do you really think they would actually go so far as to kill off Tom Holland's Spider-Man? Like, that's a question. That's a question. And do we think that Andrew Garfield necessarily wants to play Spider-Man again in the long run? Because this could be another opportunity for Sony to make amends with him after the whole fiasco that happened with him getting fired because he didn't attend that meeting and shit. Like, it's so stupid. I mean, also, like, it makes sense to, like, kill off Sally Field's Aunt May off screen because, I mean, like, she's not gonna want to take the role again. And, you know, make it so he's got nothing left in his home universe to justify him coming over to the MCU. This universe needs a Spider-Man, and he'll do that job. They could even make it so that there is a Gwen Stacy in the MCU, and he's staying for her. The way I see it, out of him and Tobey Maguire, he's the Spider-Man with the least to lose in his own universe. So, if I were to pick one of those two Spider-Men to stay, it would be him. Kind of reminds me of those whole rumors that, like, Michael Keaton will be replacing the Ben Affleck Batman in the DC Extended Universe as well. I just think this is far more justified. But, like, let me know your theories below. Do you think this is just PR speech, like, to get a pay rise or something? Do you think Tom Holland actually means it? Or do you think, like, this could be the swan song of Tom Holland's Spider-Man? Do you think maybe we'll see that later on? Who knows? But, like, comment below, like, because I look forward to seeing your theories. But for now, folks, it's been fun as always. Bye-bye. So what do you guys think? If you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit that big, beautiful subscribe button. And of course, in the description below are links to different social media feeds, including the Patreon. If you're feeling extra generous, like the following people, who are David 20 Covers, JK Strife, Marcus Ward, Sirius the Skeptic, Biotin Arts, Mr. SP, Sergio, George is Lost, Legendary Ray Ray,
Cheesemaster769,
Adam Myers, and Fayalen Schwarzentraub. Thank you guys, you are the best of the best, but as for the rest of you, thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.